Hi everyone, and welcome to our new house in the sewers. We've got dead people, a table, 2 candles. We're sitting on a chair.
What's off the top of people's heads? What is the jankiest piece of video game real estate, especially like an open world game, that you have ever claimed as like your house before that was like standard just to be able to buy one?
The roof of the Red Rocket in Fallout 4.
Yep, good answer.
I used the county jail in Fallout New Vegas. It's like down south of Good Springs on the 15. As a storage place for a while because I was taking my time getting to anywhere where I would actually have permanent storage, so I just stuck stuff in there. I think it was one of those areas where the game wouldn't just reset everything, but to be honest, I'm not actually entirely sure. There we go. We have too much stuff.
In Morrowind, the best place to set up a house was the upper level of Shank's Shovel in Caldera, because Caldera is adjacent to the Mages Guild transports, and it's got Creeper, who's the best merchant to sell gear to, because of the adjacency, and because he accepts more types than Mudcrab.
That's very cool. What's your favorite pointless mod that you've put into a video game?
There are a lot of options here.
I don't tend to install stuff I'd call pointless.
So, let me give an example then. In Fallout 4, I installed a mod where you can take the trees from the place where Father lives, or my son Sean, and you can craft them, and you can put them all around the wasteland. So what I would do is just fill the wasteland with like real living trees with greenery and shit like that.
I have okay, so this is a weird one. Because I'm sure I have an answer, but this is the one that's coming to mind. It's not so much the mod I downloaded. So I downloaded some mod, probably like the Hunger Thirst mod for Fallout 3. And then I created a mod of that mod because the bad copy bugged me so much. Like, I created a mod just so I could go in and rewrite all of the text. Because it was grammatically accurate.
That's so Rutskarn. Oh my god, that's so on brand. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but...
Wow.
It's just like, its pop-ups are coming up every 5 seconds, and like, the spelling errors really get to you after a while.
No, that makes sense.
But it's a pointless mod, though.
Definitely.
What was the mod itself?
Like I said, I can't 100% remember, but it's probably like one of the Hunger Thirst mods for Fallout 3.
It's pretty worthless.
What do we do?
I thought that was a mud crab.
What?
Okay, let me recap. So, we came to the Imperial City to meet with Boris, the guy who was dead in the sewers back there. And
Love that for him.
And we met with him in a bar and hotel, and he was being shadowed by someone. He went down to the basement and had us follow him, and the guy who shadowed him was obviously a cultist, because of course...
What do cultists do?
Oh, why do I have life detection on this? He was a cultist, and he was carrying he was one of the cultists that killed the Emperor and stole the Amulet of Kings.
Okay.
Remember, we deposited Martin at Cloud Ruler Temple, and basically we're trying to find the Amulet of Kings that they stole. And then we killed that cultist, and on him was a book. This one here, the Mythic Dawn commentaries. And he recognized it and said, "Oh, okay, I know someone who can help you with this," and sent us to the Mages Guild, where we talked to a librarian who told us about the these books being basically just like a cultist initiation ritual, where if you could find all the books and set up a meeting, you could join the cult. So I went to go and find all the books, and then we set up a meeting, and we fought the guys and got the last book, and Boris died. And that's basically where we are now. The thinking is, which of course will turn out to be the case, is that if we... with all 4 of these, we will be able to find some clue that tells us where the cultists' hideout is.
Okay.
Doesn't Baros not have to die? Because I actually feel like he didn't die.
He does not.
Playthrough.
No, he is in a series of missions where he can die at various points, but he does not have to. But he did. So, I mean, unless you want me to go back and try to save him, which I don't.
I'll be honest, Baros, I think it was his time.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was dabbling in things that he could not understand.
We opened up a can of worms, somebody, like, last week. Like, what is it with cultists and fantasy stuff? And what fucks me up is that I've got answers, but I don't know that any of them are, like, the answer.
Let me ask you questions, and you can pretend to be an expert, like we're watching Tar in the first, 20 minutes of Tar where they're interviewing her about music. Anyone else? Just me? Okay.
Oh, well, I haven't seen the film, but I love pretending to be an expert about things.
Okay, so what is the purpose of a cultist? What are they trying to achieve? In this game specifically.
Okay. Oh, in this game specifically. In this game, they're trying to bring about a new era of chaos, and then theoretically they're on the person whose chaos's side, is my pretending to be an expert take.
Okay, broadly, what are cultists all about?
I don't really want to get into the historical, classical background, like a cult, blah blah blah. Used to just be a bunch of people
you don't want
something.
to? Because
I actually don't, because I'll be honest, I think it's kind of the distinctions get ultimately sort of tedious.
Okay, broadly speaking, can you just broadly tell me what?
Well,
do cultists do? Okay, here's a good question. Do cultists in general try to cause a chaotic universe to which that they can align themselves?
Aha! No. Well, actually, yes.
Oh.
Fuck. Wait, weirdly, yes. Because... Okay.
In what context are we talking about?
So here's the deal, right? Because here's the thing, is actual cults are just like modern day cults, as we use the term cult, are just kind of an exercise in psychology, where it's more like this is a way to prey upon things that people are generally weak to and that some people are especially weak to in a way that creates an artificial structure to their life and traps them within a cycle that is not really in their ultimate best interests.
For example,
in a way,
an example would be if you are kind of feeling like you don't have a career path, or maybe you lost your job, and then there's this guy who's like, I'm going to take you to a seminar, and you're going to meet a bunch of other people like you, and you're going to be renegades. Just pay me a bunch of money and live in my compound. And then it deteriorates into black magic stuff. That's
pretty much. And it's but if you think about it, that basically is I mean, for one thing, a lot of them do have doomsday ideation, where there's some kind of end of the world that is coming, which they will be prepared for. And for another, it really is about creating...
is a relatively recent phenomenon and an extremely Christian phenomenon, incidentally. It's not necessarily the case for historical cults.
Well, it makes sense for Christians. I know what... I can't believe I just said that out loud, but it makes sense in the sense that there are people who are Christian who believe that if the end times come, everybody gets to go to heaven. Catholicism, for example, there are parts of Catholicism that believe that you're stuck in purgatory until the second coming, basically. And so it would make sense that there's a cult that's trying to force the second coming so everybody can go to heaven. Obviously not everyone's like that, but that's the thought process behind that. That's why it's a more modern thing.
So there's an alignment chart you can build. You know those is a pizza, a sandwich alignment charts where it's lawful, neutral, chaotic, good, neutral, evil, over like how strict are you about your definition. I feel like there's one of those for cults where it's like one axis is like to what extent is a cult religious, and the other is to what extent is a cult defined by the social structure at its core. Where it's like some people would say like, oh, any religion is a cult. It's just like some are, but like I fundamentally think that that's meaningless. Like that's ultimately a nonsense definition of the word cult.
Right, of course.
But I am sort of, in terms of like content, I am pretty like I'm pretty persuadable that a cult could not be religious. That you could have cults that are basically like a multi-level marketing schemes, or
I'm glad you said it before
yeah.
me, but basically an MLM. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where it's more about like a method of gradually subsuming your control and like replacing your outside social structures with strictly controlled internal structures.
Right. So basically you're saying there are people who have lost control over their lives or feel like they lost control over their lives and find the structure and rules and meaning behind a cult kind of alluring, and then once they get into it, they can't get out. It's pretty much impossible. That's the nature of a good cult.
Right. You gradually weaken their support, their outside support mechanisms, which actually, this is interesting. I know that there are a lot, like I've played so many fucking video games that had like fantasy cults, which are loosely based off the kind of classical model of a cult as a clave of worship of a sort of singular source, but kind of with some modern satanic panic stuff thrown in. And I feel like a lot of that's just kind of Robert Howard, like Conan the Barbarian derived, but I don't actually know a ton about it. And like that kind of era of pulp.
Where is the mud crab that wants to murder me?
We've been in this bookstore for like 20 minutes, Joshua.
But I don't know that I've seen a lot of video games that really care that much about like what the average person in this cult is going through.
Right. That would be the most interesting. I would say even games like, what's that cult simulator game? You know what I'm talking about?
I think it's just called Cult Simulator.
Okay, anyway, I don't think that game really gives a shit about, like, the individual people who join it, because that's not the point of a cult. So it'd be kind of interesting. I wish this game kind of had us, infiltrate. It'd be really fucking fun to infiltrate, I think. Because then we can learn what they actually give a shit about, and, like, maybe even save someone from it, essentially.
We sort of do later, but it's really disappointing. Like, it's not, like, at all what you'd want.
Yeah, it's a RPG dungeon infiltration of a cult, which is to say that we we get maybe 20 minutes and then you have to kill everyone there.
Now you've got me thinking of like something like Sleeping Dogs, because like Sleeping Dogs had that system, right, where you have loyalty to the police, but then you also have loyalty to the triad. Well, no, I'm serious. Like, please finish. You could have this idea of like, you know, you do have an obligation to get yourself inured to the systems of the cult.
It's pointing me to.
Right.
Just as as a measure of self-preservation, if nothing else.
So, Chris, I apologize for laughing there. That was unrelated.
No, it's fine.
To your higher point. Okay, so Chris is very much right. Sleeping Dogs had a system where you got it's like you're an undercover cop in the triad, so you get triad reputation for doing triad stuff or bad stuff, and like cop reputation for doing cop stuff, and it's like I think you can gain and lose them depending on what you do. But on one occasion, I was running down a staircase, and I decided that it'd be faster if I jumped down the staircase, so I pressed the left mouse button, and my character jumped up into the air, turned 45 degrees, and launched himself like a missile straight into the back of an old lady's head.
Can't do that.
And it's just like,
can't do that.
Lost cop points.
You will absolutely lose cop points for that, I'm afraid.
That is one of my favorite, that is one of my favorite, like, game, like, alignment reputation system memories.
Okay. So, is there room in newer fantasy games or even sci-fi games for cults, and what would you want them to look like?
See, definitely. And the problem is that there's not a lot of fantasy video games that really care about people generally.
What do you mean?
I mean,
What a
I
statement!
mean what I said.
What a give me an example of what you mean. That's such an intense statement to make.
This isn't an RPG, but I would point to the way that Far Cry 5 treated its cult members as literally drugged out zombies that just charge at you with baseball bats as like and as gun fodder. That maybe is how a lot of RPGs end up treating their cultists, as sort of like, you know, you can kill them, they're cultists, they just believe in wacko stuff, they don't matter.
I see.
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess what I sort of mean by that is I think a lot of fantasy video games kind of, like, they're very in love with the trappings of their world as, like, something that is, like, fun to wield, fun to, like, delve through, like, great vistas, like, scary monsters, powerful spells, but you really, it's kind of hard to find games that seem like they really have much of an interest in, like, what it's like to be a person, I guess. Like,
you mean generally, not just cultists?
Oh yeah, generally, absolutely.
Wow.
How? What?
I mean, it's kind of.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think I agree with that. I don't think I agree with that. I mean, sometimes I literally am just like chilling, and I remember something Morden said, and I'm like, oh, I love Morden. What a pal.
Oh, hey, no, I'm not like. I would actually say like the Dragon Age stuff is probably an exception. Like I can definitely think about like. Or like game stuff like from BioWare that I do actually think really does care about that stuff. I think it's just like kind of as a, like maybe not RPGs specifically, but just kind of the genre as a whole. Although honestly, I feel like I've played a lot of fantasy RPGs that just like didn't really seem like there was a lot of believable people in them.
Okay, that's fair. That is fair.
Like, okay. So, one of the most savage things I've ever heard in my entire life was from when Dan Olson, who, like, briefly worked for, like, the Doug Walker Channel Awesome kind of thing, and then, like, left it, made his statements, and then never really addressed it again for a while. He did... Patreon, like, got him to review one of Doug Walker's kind of like bigger projects, like movie projects. And at one point, he just kind of
wait. Who's Doug Walker? Is that Nostalgia Critic?
Oh, Nostalgia Critic.
That is Nostalgia.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
He was reviewing Nostalgia Critic. I don't know if you saw. Nostalgia Critic did a like movie length version of The Wall.
The Mythic Dawn.
Yeah, I've heard. I've seen memes.
Yeah, it's fucking terrible, but. So Doug Walker, Dan Olson's patrons eventually paid for him to like return to the subject of Doug Walker just to review this one movie, and which like he does in this really kind of this very clinical, surgical way that's actually incredibly brutal. But at one point, he just kind of casually drops the line like. See, what this is Doug trying to make a film. Like, Doug wants to make movies. He wants to make art, but he can't because he's not really interested in what other people think or feel.
In effect, simply by
he's fundamentally incurious.
So that's what you're saying about Bioshock Infinite. Got it.
That's what I'm saying about, well, actually, kind of, yeah. I think Bioshock Infinite is basically not curious about how other people think or feel.
I have any ideas.
That's
fascinating. Does anybody have those quotes from Campster's video on Bioshock Infinite lying around still?
Only that he really loved it and thought it was awesome.
Yes,
his words, not mine.
Dawn, supposedly written by
but I think, like, you know, there's a certain trend in video games generally not to really come from that creative place. Not to really, like, when you're writing it or you're coming up with it, you're thinking about stuff that's, like, justifying what the player's doing. And it ends up being kind of very, like, practical, like, event A causes event B writing that doesn't really feel like just one of the inspirations for the work is kind of just, like, being interested in people. And I guess I feel like that's something that fantasy can fall prey to a lot, too, even when it feels like it shouldn't. Even when it feels like there should be more time to, like, kind of, you know, meet NPCs and see their lives. It often feels like it's like, well, I had to put an NPC here, and I had kind of like a mental picture of a peasant, and I like extrapolated that on that like an AI art generator would. And
I saw a tweet today
done
where a lady was talking about how she writes for video games, and she was saying how like she'll write a scene that says like she opens up her purse and it'll destroy like 7 different departments. And it's like, I think that the want is there, sometimes, not all the time, but the want is there to like really make this an immersive thing and make real characters. But then you're stuck with the confines of whatever that AAA game is, and how soon you have to let it out, basically.
Yeah, and how long you have to write it, like, you know.
Right.
I'm not like to be clear, I sort of hope that this would go like, okay, no, this really doesn't go without saying, and I really do need to say it. What I am not saying is that video game writers are creatively bankrupt or soulless. I'm saying that video game production is a fucking grind.
Yeah, exactly.
If I can take us away from the increasingly ever-present Oblivion podcast.
Sorry.
So we've got all of the 4 volumes of the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, and we need to study these in order to find the hidden clue that allows us, the secret code that allows us to figure out where their base is. Now, I can let you guys read this and try to figure it out, or I can give it to you right now.
Oh, you want me to solve a riddle on
on
a Let's Play?
I actually remember this one because people solved it before the game came out.
Did they post the text somewhere?
There's like I forget. There was some kind of preview they did where like they had and like people immediately spotted that there was something up.
Yeah. Okay. Get out a notepad or something.
Uppercase.
It's every
letter.
illuminated letter. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh fucking jeez.
Yeah, it's.
I got it in one.
When I replayed this recently, I studied these things trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and then I looked at the letters and I was like, no, they wouldn't do that. No, okay, here it is. Green Emperor Way where tower touches midday
horse's
sun.
ass.
So we need to go to Green Emperor Way, where the tower in it touches
that's the central
particular
spire.
spot in the yeah.
How do you not write a joke? How do you do that? Let me know in the comments. How do you do that with like straight-faced, I'm just gonna write a whole thing instead of putting in a joke somehow? Like, I don't understand how you could not resist putting in a fucking joke. I don't get it.
So I guess to sort of tie back what I was saying, because I did start making some very huge claims.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to have you pump the brakes a little bit.
No, I'm gonna step on the gas again. So the thing, like, we're talking about how it would be interesting to see a game that cared more about like what the lives of cultists are like what life experiences leads you up to being in this cult, like what is it like being in the cult, like what is the emotional experience of being a member of a cult trying to end the world, like do you have doubts, like but like you don't see a lot of fantasy video games that get into that question. I think firstly because it doesn't really occur to many people because they're just, or like it doesn't really occur to many game developers in the production phase because it's very much like these are cultists because that is a kind of video game enemy that we are putting in here. Or like if there is like a writer who's writing something who does care about these things, there just doesn't end up being time for it. Or like there's a gameplay conflict where like you need to be mowing these guys down by the hundreds, so you don't want them to be fully fleshed out people because that will make the player feel like a psychopath.
That's true.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah, and so whatever the creative inspiration of the writers are, like whatever the kind of is in their intentions, you end up with games that feel like there's a void where this stuff should be.
I think some of it comes down to the very classic video game problem of way too many games having to be reliant on physical conflict slash systems of violence because that's the easiest thing to systemize.
Right. That makes sense.
Plus,
you just can't keep fighting skeletons, you know?
Plus, like, if you've got writers who've got the chops to really, really sell all this stuff, odds are that, like, their day-to-day is not necessarily going to be writing theoretical dialogues with the cultists, but that they're going to be working on stuff that, like, is closer to the main narrative thrust.
Well, and also, like, Fallout... There it is. You found it. It's that big fucking glowing-ass neon sign.
It only
that says,
glows
"Here,
at noon, though.
That is kind of cool that it only glows for an hour a day.
Yeah, so if I do this,
I feel like people would still find it and put it on TikTok.
But you can still see it. Like, it's still embedded in the thing. Anyway, so that's over here north of Cheydinhall. First, I want to go to Argent.
I mean, at a certain point, also, I think we're asking Oblivion to be a game it just isn't, right? Like, this has been long been a criticism of my criticism of stuff like Fallout, where it's like, I want it to be a game that it doesn't want to be. Fallout wants to be and to some extent Oblivion and Bethesda open world games in general, want to be the super fun power fantasy where you get to do everything in one playthrough. And that drives me absolutely crazy, but that's the game Bethesda ostensibly wants to make. And as long as that's the case, I don't think you're ever going to get like a nuanced take on like the internal politics of cults.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I really don't feel like, for all I've kind of been like
whatever you want,
talking a big game about all this stuff, like I don't really know why this stuff is missing from like Bethesda games particularly, or why it feels like when they try to do it, it does sort of ends up ringing hollow. I really don't want to just conclude like it's not like it comes down to just the people doing it, because that's often not the case. You know, it really often is just kind of an issue of schedules or logistics. But
what a dumb joke.
I will say that Skyrim in particular did kind of feel like it had this problem sometimes, where even when it did feel like it was zooming in more on like kind of people's lives, it didn't really know what should be there once it did.
I think part of that is just Bethesda's system's first approach to everything, right? Like, you can get married to multiple characters in Skyrim, but, like, to what end, right? Like, I saw there's just... Once you are actually married, they just sort of hang around your house.
You don't expect me...
And that's
they
a weird
say nice
dynamic.
stuff to you, too. They go like, oh, welcome back, my love.
But isn't that also kind of creepy that they have no interiority? Like they just exist to sort of like compliment you when you come in?
I get the sense that none of you played with dolls when you were young. Am I correct on that?
No, I most certainly did.
So, like, when you play with dolls, you sort of put a lot into it. For me, Skyrim, I could put a lot onto Skyrim that wasn't there. Like, Skyrim to me was like an adult version of like playing with dolls. Because I could be like, ooh, I need to go make some food at my home for my husband. Oh, I made pumpkin stuff that I stole from this place because I'm a thief, hee hee. And it's like, that is not in the fucking game. It is in my brain. But the game is so, like, blank slate that you can put that imagination onto it if you want.
This is a tangent, but just since you mentioned dolls, do you remember Polly Pockets?
Oh fuck yeah, Polly Pocket!
I think I could draw a direct line between my playing with Polly Pockets as a child and my interest in like building miniature scenery for tabletop games today. It's exactly the same drive.
I love that.
I was like, I built a dugout for my Blood Bowl team, which is like a bunch of halflings, just like their little dugout where they have like their bar and their kind of their medical station and stuff. Just, as I was doing it, I was like, yeah, hell yeah. This is basically just that.
The reason why I love Skyrim is because it has nothing. It is a hollow shell for me to pour all of my imagination into. Truly, that's why I like it.
Yeah, that's valid.